Bangladesh was one of the richest nations in the world. The Subah of Bengal, which was a part of the Mughal Empire, was producing the Louis Vuittons or the Birkin bags, the muslin and the silk trade for the entire world. It was the capital of the world. We have a heritage of being a cultural, production, manufacturing, and luxury goods producer in the world. We did that. And this was when we were at the top of our game. This was 400-500 years ago. As Muslims and as people from a greater cause or purpose, we have the ability to look back at our history and have pride that we're not just anyone. We come from a great heritage, the heritage of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We came to this region and we contributed to its growth and its development and became one of the most prosperous regions in the entire Mughal Empire. And we believe that we can contribute to global prosperity as well by focusing back on the history that we have, the heritage we come from, as opposed to feeling sorry for ourselves. We are a strong and powerful nation.
Dr. Sayd Farook, thank you for being with us. You are from Bangladesh and you are personally impacted by the recent events. Tell us about yourself.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. I am the son of Colonel Sayd Farook. I have lived experience with respect to Bangladesh. I grew up there all my life. I came here as an asylum seeker when I was 16 years old. And since then, I've done my PhD and my work here in Australia and UTS. And then I went and worked in the Middle East as a global head of Islamic capital markets at Thomson Reuters, and then also at the Executive Office of the Vice President and Prime Minister of the UAE and the ruler of Dubai. And then finally now I run a global consulting firm called Dinar Standard, where I'm a partner, and I also run a school on the side.
Celebrations have taken place all over the world since the toppling of Sheikh Hasina recently in Bangladesh. For some it's been victory, for some it's been uncertainty. What is the atmosphere like now in Bangladesh?
I think generally there's a cautious optimism, which means that there is a hope for a brighter future. For about 16 years now, any voice that did not ally to the regime, which in many instances was authoritarian, in fact in all instances was authoritarian, was stifled. And so people feel like they can breathe. People feel they can express their opinions, and people feel like they can go about doing their business without having to ally themselves with the regime and whatever the opinion of the regime is, or without having to mollycoddle or to pay teeth or taxes to the regime. And that's a transformation, and I think a lot of the people everywhere I've spoken to them, whether they're outside or inside, have a deep conviction and passion to hope for a brighter future for Bangladesh. This has never happened in about more than 50 years. We're reaching around 53 years of our independence. That's why they call it Bangladesh 2.0. This is a great hope for a bright future that we've never witnessed before.
Tensions have been quite high for the last 15 years during Sheikh Hasina's rule. Why do you think the protests happen now and in the manner that they did?
So I believe it's a powder keg, right? It's been waiting to happen for a while, but there's no instigation for it. And it has been volatile, or there has been a suppressed interest for people to want to express themselves, for people to want to live their lives according to their own lifestyles, and for people to ally with whoever they wanted to. What's happened why it happened now as opposed to before was it just reached a boiling point, really. Anything could have lit this powder keg, anything could have. It just so happened that the quota system for government jobs enable that powder keg to be lit. But this has been boiling for the past, I would say, 6 to 7 years. I've been hearing it across the board. And
your relationship with Sheikh Hasina is quite a personal one. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I have no personal offense or any vendetta or anything else associated with Sheikh Hasina or her family. My father, on the other hand, was the individual who masterminded the coup that replaced Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in 1975. He did that on a couple of grounds. The first is that the erosion of democratic voice and choice in Bangladesh. Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was on his way to dismantle all political parties and create a one-party nation state. That was the Awami League, and it was called the Baksal, as it's called, BKSAL. And his objective at that time was very clear, and he had created an actual military force of his own, in addition to the army, that was going to control Bangladesh. The bigger, more geopolitical reasons associated with that was my father was not happy with the allowance given to Bangladesh for other countries to interfere in our politics, in our country's affairs. And that was increasingly happening. On the more smaller side of the equation, there's a lot of things he witnessed personally himself. Because he was stationed to control law and order, just like the military is doing right now, he'd witnessed in multiple occasions that murderers, rapists, thieves, and dacoits were going around and being picked up by himself. And then as soon as they were put to the station, they were being released by calls being made to Mujibur Rahman's sons. And this was multiple occurrences that have happened. And this led him to concern that we are abrogating the rule of law in our country. We're letting go of criminals who are perpetuating crimes against the people of Bangladesh. They're sometimes killing people, and they're getting away with murder, literally. And he couldn't see that. And that was strife all across the country because the ruler at the time allowed that to happen. I don't have a personal vendetta. I think even my father didn't with Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. But sometimes weak rulers allow for things to happen that just cannot happen because of their foresight or lack of foresight otherwise.
And how do you feel about that, given what's just unfolded in Bangladesh recently?
What's interesting that's happened just in the past month, and it's unfolded by the students themselves, is they said the situation that happened in 1975, August 15th, 1975, 49 years ago, was exactly the same situation as now. Anything could have lit that powder keg because everyone was upset. And we have video clips, we have evidence, we have people. You ask anyone of that era, they were all happy and they came to the streets and they had no issues with losing that government, as they do now. Everyone is in the streets, everyone is happy. Of course, there's a little bit of concern about law and order right now, but the army and the government is restoring that. But after 49 years, I feel vindicated that what my father stood up for was evidenced in the past 15 years. No one could talk about it, but they felt the dictatorship, they felt the authoritarian regime, and finally they feel vindicated. I feel vindicated that we've been able to secure a brighter hope for the future of Bangladesh that allows for all voices to be heard and allows for the rule of law to be reestablished again.
In your opinion, do you think there is foreign intervention in Bangladesh?
I can't point to any specific data points or evidence that I have. Bangladesh is a very strategic geopolitical location. And as a result of that, it is of interest to many parties, not just one. And they would like to influence the course of what happens to Bangladesh because it sits on top of the Bay of Bengal. It's a very important port. And it has access, as you know, for India. It's a critical access pathway to the other side of India. Plus, it's also important for China. And of course, beyond that, there's of course larger powers, as you know, that would like to influence the course of the global geopolitical relationships between countries. So, could they have been involved? Possibly. Would their blessings would some powers' blessings have to be in place for this to happen? Possibly. But we have no conclusive evidence that it was stoked or supported by that. But in the history of Bangladesh, there have been a number of political powers that have always been involved in some way or the other.
In the recent protests, there was many students that were killed, innocent students. And Sheikh Hasina was, left Bangladesh on a military plane. Do you think there is some form of accountability that is required?
Absolutely. The protests by the students and the lives lost is absolute travesty for our country. For innocent lives who just wanted their rights to be heard and for there to be a forum for that to be heard and to have been murdered really mercilessly. And we don't even know if it's by Bangladeshi forces. Absolutely, there needs to be some accountability. There needs to be an investigation. And I understand that the country is very keen on accelerating that investigation. absolutely, this is the most critical order of the day. We can't move past this period unless we bring to justice all those who called the shots, but also made the actual killings happen.
What is the future of Bangladesh now? I mean, what's the way forward? How do we ensure that the country prospers?
So Bangladesh is a wonderful country. It has a lot of hope and brightness of future. The reason is it has a very large population, 170 million, 50% of which is under the age of 30, which is very powerful. In this day and age where most countries are reeling from a decline in population, we are a powerhouse when it comes to a young, youthful population, where our education indicators and a number of other indicators as well, in terms of our exports and our capability to produce, is also, we punch far above our weight in terms of other developing nations. Mm-hmm. And so we have a lot going for us. What I think is really critical and in the immediate stage is establishing the rule of law, establishing the institutional systems. There's a powerful book that's been written called Why Nations Fail. And what it points to is that majority of the nations, whether you look at North Korea or South Korea and every other context, is that the majority of the nations that fail because they have not developed robust institutions with accountability and a rule of law associated with those institutions, the processes and systems that allow for players not to interfere in the running order of the country. What happens now is that it is more personality driven, it's more political party driven rather than institutionally driven. And so if we can establish that base, and then of course, there's enough energy, there's enough momentum. I myself have invested in a number of companies in Bangladesh. The rest will do itself. That's the power of Bangladesh.
So is there a political solution for Bangladesh moving forward?
Yes, it is. I think there has to be new voices heard. The student movement is another powerful movement. The new generation of students have to be a part of the solution to Bangladesh. They have to organize, of course, with the wise elders in the room. I think we need to move away from the old politics of fealty and loyalty to individuals or to specific causes. The focus has to move away from the past or the historical legacy to a future-focused legacy. And the only people who can do that future-focused legacy are the students. They have the voice, they have the power, and they have the ability to mobilize like never before.
Okay, and what do you think, in your opinion, what does Bangladesh need now?
Bangladesh needs right now a vision for the future. It needs a vision that can galvanize our young people and give them hope that, hey, I can make it up the ladder, or hey, I can, 50% of the population, right? So I can work hard and have opportunity. And for that, you need to mobilize both the government to invest in massive infrastructure programs that give them opportunities for access, but also allow for international investors to come into the country. It is a great opportunity for people from overseas, from other countries, because of just by our sheer numbers, right? It's a great demographic opportunity. But in addition to that, you need to create the mechanisms of a strategy for the future that enables us, say aiming out at 2050 and then working backwards. What do we need to deliver on a strategy for the future that gets us sequentially moving towards a much bigger goal? And our goal shouldn't be that we are less than a top 20 economy in the world.
Okay, and obviously, Bangladesh has had its independence from Pakistan, and there's quite a lot of influence from the Indian side. How do you see that playing moving forward?
I think Bangladesh is interdependent on everyone around us, including China, including India, including the United States, including Russia, and including every other political influence in the region. As much as we have influence of others, as much as we need to cooperate with other countries, we can never lose our independence, our view to look after our interests first as a country, our needs as a country, before or being subservient to other nations and what their demands are. That's from a geopolitical perspective, that independence was perceived to be lost in the past 15 years. And that's what a lot of people are concerned about, and they don't want that to be repeated ever again.
What's your message for Bangladeshis in Bangladesh and outside of Bangladesh?
I think this is your opportunity to go back and contribute. We've had an elite political class who have for many years been extractive of all of the resources of Bangladesh and actually diverted away. The Bangladeshi population is a great growth and hope story. I believe in them, just like my father did, that they can transform their country's destiny. And the message I have for all Bangladeshis, whether overseas or not, and I can give you some stories around this, is go back and build. Go back and build in the tech sector. Go back and build manufacturing enterprises. The country has enough and ample demand. And with the right rule of law and due process in terms of government, and if they can get away, if the government can keep away from it, Bangladesh is the greatest, one of the greatest opportunities that exists for you as a Bangladeshi, and even as an expat. And I've witnessed it. I've witnessed founders from the United Kingdom, founders from all over the world, gone back and built in Bangladesh. They've raised $20, $30 million from international investors, and their companies are producing $50 to $60 million worth of revenue in Bangladesh now, in 3 or 4 years' time. So there's huge opportunities in Bangladesh. I can't belittle the size that Bangladesh is in terms of opportunity. There is very few markets in the world that are that significant. So my message to individuals, professionals, or expatriates who've left the country, or even those that are in the country, this is your time to build back better, build a new future for Bangladesh. It's not going to happen by itself. It will require your talents, your professionalism, and all the education that you've been gifted with to return back and create a new future for all our people.
Bangladesh has got quite a high percentage of Muslims in terms of population. How do we instill and inspire hope for them moving forward?
So what's really powerful is there's a book written by Amy Chua that's called Triple Package, and she talks about the reason why African Americans have gone through so much difficulty in the United States, despite them historically being of tribes that go back 5,000-6,000 years, even longer, very noble tribes. But that cut that occurred, that disentangled them from their history, made that they didn't have any identity. And my view is Bangladesh was one of the richest nations in the world. Bengal was. The Subah of Bengal, which was a part of the Mughal Empire, was producing the Louis Vuittons or the Birkin bags, the muslin and the silk trade for the entire world. It was the capital of the world. And we have a heritage of being a cultural production and manufacturing and luxury goods producer in the world. We did that. And this was when we were at the top of our game. This was 400-500 years ago, right? We have all the capacity to do so. I believe the critical thing is, as Muslims and as people from a greater cause or purpose, we have the ability to look back at our history and have pride that we're not just anyone, we're nobodies. We come from a great heritage, the heritage of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We came to this region and we contributed to its growth and its development and became one of the most prosperous regions in the entire Mughal Empire and contributed to the coffers of Delhi in the capital. And we believe that we can contribute to global prosperity as well by focusing back on our pride and the history that we have, the heritage we come from, as opposed to feeling sorry for ourselves. We are a strong and powerful nation.
Now, Bangladesh is quite sensitive towards climate change. As we're speaking, there are floods ravaging in Bangladesh at the moment. Is Bangladesh equipped to deal with the climate change that's happening at the moment?
So it is a very difficult situation for Bangladesh. We are faced with the impending risks of what's happening all over globally in terms of climate change. In fact, we are going to be one of the greatest victims of climate change as our alluvial soils start declining and the water starts rising on our Bay of Bengal. However, there are countries who have much smaller landmass who are producing much better outcomes. What there needs to be is dedicated and systematic strategies that we deploy across the country to protect our people from the effects of climate change, including resilience mechanisms, including protecting them from the issues associated with it, creating the safety nets that allow them to get back up again from every time a climate disaster hits us. We know, just like in life, disasters are going to hit us, and it's okay. It's the preparedness, the ability to get back up again, and the strategies that we employ as a nation, which will enable us to thrive in the future. Now, will we need support from other countries? Yes. Will we need support and cooperation with our neighbor, for whom we share most of our border, India? Absolutely. It's not going to happen by ourselves.
Very good. Now, the student protests that took place were quite inspiring. I mean, you have quite a young generation there in Bangladesh who stood up for something that is right. We've seen, the students run encampments in support of Gaza across the world as well. How do you think in Bangladesh, the young generation and the young youth can have an impact in the future?
So I think they are going to be the driver of change in the future. They've obviously evidenced, and I'm really happy to hear and see that they actually have an active voice in the new advisor government. They have shown the world how to mobilize. And even now, every single day, whether it's for the flood, whether it's for miscreants who are trying to create problems, whether it's for people who are trying to destabilize the government, they come up in droves and they're mobilizing in forces. I've been so inspired to see that they've actually gained their voice and are harnessing it continuously wherever the problem is. And they're doing this all through social media. It's so powerful to see. And to be honest with you, I've not seen that in any other context with so much effectiveness anywhere else in the world in the past recent history. Particularly when you hear about what's happening in Gaza and elsewhere, where our hearts are crying out for it. We're going to protest, but nothing's happening because the institutional system is absolutely against it. In here, the major institutional system that could have absolutely repressed this would be the army, right? They would just kill people. But thankfully, alhamdulillah, the army understood their role and they backed off from allowing people to express themselves and allowed them to ensure that they get their rights and their voice heard, which hasn't happened for a while. Thankfully, and let's hope it doesn't happen, that the army plays that passive role, that it plays the role of defending the country, not destroying the voices for the country, not affecting the stability of the country. In many other countries, as you know, the army takes overarching influence that then destroys the ability for people to also influence. They become the dictator themselves. They become authoritarian force themselves. Whereas their role is to protect. Their role is to ensure that they allow for the voices to be heard and protect the people from harm. That's their only role.
So given your personal experience, your father's role in Bangladesh, and Bangladesh 2.0, if you want to call it now, what's your sort of final message into the future?
So I have 100% conviction that bar the influence and the destabilization forces of external forces, Bangladesh has one of the brightest futures in the world. That's because it has all the rules, it meets all the rules now of what successful nations need. It has the opportunity to craft a bright future if we allow that to happen. And I'm really, really excited for the next 25 years. And the critical thing here was you need a reformer-oriented government in place that is seeking to improve the condition of the country. We didn't have that for a long time. We had people who were looking to the past. And so I've never been this excited in my entire life about the future of Bangladesh, and it's been a long time as I am now. And I think that's what we feel, that if we can unlock the potential of every individual in Bangladesh and unlock their human transformation, we will be one of the greatest nations on the world.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless the people of Bangladesh. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect Bangladesh.
Amen.
Dr. Sayd Farook, thank you for your time.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you.